After Dark. Welcome back to MOTN After Dark, where me, your crazy, insane host Mike G, talks about and rambles for an eternity about some topics within the nerdiverse that few may deem risque or a little left of center. And as you could see on the title of this episode is we're going to be talking about evil. What is evil? And what does that word mean? And what has it meant to humanity since we devised the word? And what does it mean, of course, within the realm of popular culture? Now, the definition of evil, which can be both an adjective and a noun, is, as an adjective, it's profoundly immoral or wicked. Or as a noun, profound immorality or wickedness, especially when regarded as a supernatural force. It's almost like evil as a concept isn't real, but it is. It's very real. It's just as real as any other socially, I would say, engineered concept, such as love and goodness and righteousness and things us humans have created to set ourselves apart from the animals, as it were, from the rest of the animal kingdom. And I was recently inspired to talk about this after watching a movie where they construed that the antagonist of the film was pure evil and therefore had no reason to be alive, no further reason to exist. And it just got me thinking about the concept of evil and what does that mean for the rest of us who fight against such things as evil itself. And you can do an evil counter, because I'm probably going to say that word a lot in these next 20 minutes. So I sit and I think about evil itself. What would evil be in regards to an action or a way of thinking or a way of life? And it just makes me think about evil as the antithesis of good. And good into itself is a concept that's based on morality and social constructs such as, lawfulness and do the right thing, right? Where there's a lot of thought put into good. You have to want to be good, right? You have to strive to be good. Whereas evil in itself, pure evil, tends to come naturally to most things and for some reason to most people. And I think there's varying degrees of evil. Of course, nothing is black and white. There are no absolutes other than life and death. But whereas to be good is to make a decision to be good, most pure evil things seem to lack that step. They seem to just go from zero to evil, especially in popular culture, where you have a character like Michael Myers, who was never given a motive to his slasher background. He was a kid. I would assume he was a decent kid until the night of that Halloween. And then something just clicks off in his brain and he becomes this unfeeling, unresponsive killing machine. But why? Why? We're never given a reason, ever, of his motivations, his true motivations. He's never talked to us to tell us. Whereas a character who's profoundly good, let's say like Superman, he fights for truth, justice, in the American way. But we've heard a million times why he wants to be Superman, why he wants to help people. And it just makes me think of opposites, like polar opposites within this bitch of an earth we live in. Positive, negative, love, hate, off, on, hot, cold. Whereas the best of humanity is found in good. You know, what we strive to be as decent people, treating ourselves with a certain level of respect and admiration and empathy. Whereas evil, as low as evil as you can get, is almost seems like devoid of humanity. The less humane you are, the less these concepts seem to matter to you. And people can say some animals are evil, some of these things that don't have morality, but they also have a sense of code to themselves too. An animal's not going to eat you for the sake of hunting. Well, some might, because they're maybe programmed a certain way, but for the most part, they're hunting because they're hungry. They attack because they're scared. It's a response to something, right? Just like how good is a response to the negative side of things that we don't accept as people, like racism, bigotry, sexism. We consider these things negative. So to be good, we rally against it. But on the opposite side of that spectrum, the people who are being this way do not see it as evil. So then it becomes a sense of positioning. That's why I wouldn't consider these people to be relatively evil. They may be negative, they may be malicious, but these are responses based upon how they feel about a certain topic. Just because I disagree with you, even about something that's, to me, abhorrent, doesn't necessarily make that person evil. Whereas someone like Ed Gein, who's stuffing people in his walls, some may seem to be absolute evil. And why is that? Why is it almost seems like the less we can relate to a particular negative, in our eyes, negative action, the more evil it becomes. Where it makes me think that because evil seems to be the devoid of humanity, it also seems to be the devoid of, I would not say the devoid of choice, because I believe there's a level of choice in every living, breathing creature, but it's a devoid of that morality. Whereas on the same token, a bloodthirsty animal acting on instinct to some may seem evil, or a cold calculating AI may seem evil because it just totally is devoid of negotiation. On both sides of those spectrums, it's devoid. You're not going to negotiate with a shark, right? There's no negotiation there. At the same time, you're not negotiating with Hal 9000 or Ultron, for that matter, or the Ghost in the Machine. You're not negotiating with the clean, clinical Skynet, right? So I think evil into itself is a definition of a lack of humanity, whereas there's other forms of negative, I would say, actions that are based upon, I would say, reason and decision. Like one of the biggest evil, I would say, constructs of humanity is the idea of Satan, Lucifer, the devil, El Diablo. Whereas from our point of view, he is the absolute antithesis to God. But from Lucifer's point of view, he did not want to be second to man, who was more like unto God than the angels. He took umbrage with that, and thus was the word in heaven, and he fell down to earth, and the rest is history. But there's rationale to that. You can almost on a weird level, you can see the avarice in get the poison that must have been in someone who thinks like that's mine, versus, something that seems to be beyond emotion, that seems to be beyond reasoning. Whereas either side of those spectrums in pop culture can be very boring. Like, a lot of people do not like Superman because he's so good, right? He has no layers. And that's not true, obviously. Superman has tons of layers. He's an onion. But for the non-initiated, the nerds out there. You may seem like this perfect, almost Christ-like being who's totally, absolutely powerful and has no flaws. That's boring, right? But at the same time, for cases in evil, you have characters like, let's say, Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. He is an evil creature, but he started out as a man who was a child murderer, who was then killed via mob justice, who came back as a vengeful spirit, who wanted to visit the sins of the father onto the children of the parents who did him in back in his day, And there's still wiggle room for understanding of the feeling of vengeance. Even if he was in the wrong the absolute 100% time, he's still a spirit of vengeance, thus, on some level, evil. And it makes you think of the protagonist-antagonist relationships in almost every form of literature, television, and any form of audio media. And for the most part, because there needs to be depth and layers to story, that both sides can be usually understood, and I would say even a sort of empathic connection to. So I can definitely understand why Lex Luthor hates Superman, but then he takes it that one step too far and endangers millions of lives to prove a point. That's not necessarily evil. It's just a rationale of a brain that's kind of that's working in overcharge or working in overtime. But then it starts to get a little blurry. Like, then what is evil, right? Because good is so easy to wrap your brain around. I'm choosing to do this, that, and the third. I'm choosing to be the hero. I'm choosing to be the martyr. I'm choosing to be the voice of the people. But evil is almost like alien. It's almost so devoid of good that it's hard to pinpoint anything in life that is truly evil. Like, it's such a strong word. It's like hate. Hate is such a strong word, but we throw it around like it's anything. I hate onions on my onions on my pizza. It's like, no, you don't like it. To hate something is it goes a little deeper. In pure evil, it's the same way, I believe. You think of villains who, for the most part, you think of a villain like the Joker, right? Joker is the closest thing to evil because the Joker's motivations, at least in popular culture, are never really planned out. He's a chaotic engine, whereas makes me think that chaotic evil is probably the purest form of evil because there's no rationale to it. There's no beginning, middle, or end to it. It just is. Like I mentioned earlier in this show, you live and then you die. It's A to B. But with evil, there's no start or beginning. It's just a feeling. It's not even a thought. It's not even an emotion. It's a aura. It's a energy that we as human beings, as humanity, have attached to things that don't necessarily fit that definition. Wickedness, even wickedness is a form of a form of argument. Look at the Salem witch trials, where the good old Puritans were burning witches at the stake because they believed in something that was contrary to their belief. There's still something to be taken away from the other side of the spectrum. And I think that's where the biggest disconnect is between social abnormity and pure evil, is that you could still see the other side of the spectrum, to some. And it's almost like looking at things from both sides. There's really religions out there that hate other religions, but on the other side of that spectrum, that religion is feeling the heat from the other religion and may feel some kind of way about that religion, but it's just two different ideologies clashing against each other. It's not the void of love or the void of passion or the void of understanding versus, full human, the spectrum of full human emotion. It's nothing to the point of like the point of like maliciousness, not for the sake of enjoyment or satisfaction. I don't think there's any pure satisfaction to be taken from pure evil, because then at that point it has to be good to you. But I don't think evil has anything to counterbalance itself quite like how good has to counterbalance with evil. From the evil side's point of view, it's doing what it does, and outside of human emotion. Whereas people could be bad, people could be negative, characters could be bad, characters could be negative, and it almost makes me think of the heroes and villains of comic books. We have a character like Dr. Doom, who's super not evil, technically. He's not an evil villain. Dr. Doom is extremely misunderstood, but he's a stickler. Dr. Doom is a big stickler about everything. Look at Magneto. Perfect example. He's the head of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but they're not necessarily evil. They see a different point of view of things. And that is to the contrary of the social norm of peace, love, and understanding, where they understand that for them to reach a certain place in their within the social construct, they have to cause disturbance to shake things up. And sometimes that disturbance may lead to violence, where Charles Xavier is just like, no, just chill. I'm going to send my child soldiers to destroy you. And I know you're not going to go 100% because Magneto just doesn't want to take this time to kill young mutants, which I've always thought was weird. And in my own way, I've always seen Charles Xavier to be more of a negative, I would say, to make worse decisions than Magneto or Eric Landsher has, or Magnus, or whatever you want to call him. But evil is a funny concept when you sit and really think about it for more than 10 seconds. Because it's not real, in a way. Because nothing is truly that devoid of reason or choice or decision. Even because what exists outside of us? There's animals, there's plant life, there's oxygen, there's water, mountains, fire. None of these things you would just really say are absolute evil, right? Can't be. Even a shark wants to attack you because you look like a chunky little seal and it's hungry, it's dinner. But it's also a killing machine that will take you out because that's what it's programmed to do via years of evolution. Whereas as humans, we do things maliciously. We do things out of spite and out of just overall avarice, the 7 deadly sins. Let's talk about that for a second while we close this out. The 7 deadly sins are all based upon human want and desire. One sin usually leads to the other. But if you combine all sin, it's almost like when to make the color black, you have to add all colors, and then it becomes no color. I think that's the perfect example of evil. Evil can be either everything or nothing, but it comes to the same place at the end of the day. And I think that's the thing I'm going to take away from this little round robin I've been doing in my head about this concept, because I just got the urge to talk about it, is that evil can be as everything and as nothing as it needs to be, because it is everything and nothing. Whereas good is a solid understanding of maintaining a social norm, maintaining good, I would say, quote unquote, good standing with yourself and with the people around you. From good comes civil action. From good comes stability within a community, in a world. But evil doesn't really breed anything but more evil, does it? But then again, going back in a circle, what is evil? Except for a over exaggerated definition of a difference in opinion, which I don't consider to be that extreme. You can negotiate with someone who has a difference of opinion. You can train an animal to not be so vicious and not be so cold and not be so aggressive. But you can't negotiate with something that doesn't even hear what you're saying, because there's no words to evil. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It just is. And there's nothing that we've encountered yet on this plane of existence that truly embodies evil. I said that word a lot, didn't I? If you like this content, you can definitely always get these episodes set a whole week early, 7 days early, if you join our Patreon, which is patreon.com/MOTN, where at the second tier, the $5 tier, you will get a nice chunky shout out on our next episode of Master the Nerdiverse podcast. You'll be invited to our Discord, where you can hang out with us and have conversations while we play games like Final Fantasy XIV, some fighting games. I'll jump in a fighting game if you want to jump in a fighting game and play some rounds. Everything and all above. We'll become good big buddies and frenzies. And you also get early exclusive access to our content, which is MOTN reviews, MOTN top 10s, and of course, MOTN After Darks. I've, of course, been your host, Mike G. And I will always ask you to turn off the lights and light a candle.